Hi everybody, this is Anne. I was surprised that the cost of a box of commercial ceramic crayons were over $40. I wanted to find a way to save money and make my own. I found some great recipes published by Robin Hopper for making not only crayons, but mason stain pencils, pastels, watercolors, and inks too. In this video, I'll show you how to make these decorating tools yourself and experiment to find the best ways to use them on your clay surface. All of these recipes are made from the same raw materials, just different percentages, combinations, and your choice of mason stain. I'll post them all for you and provide a link in the description section under the video. Remember to wear your dust mask when you're making them. The original recipes call for some generic ingredients. I did a little research to figure out if I had substitutions in my own studio supplies that would work. I'll give you the substitutions that I used in the recipes in the link. I'll be making small 100-gram batches of each recipe, which results in about a half a cup or so, which will last me for quite a few projects. I used a digital kitchen scale that I programmed to measure grams to weigh my ingredients. In this case, I needed 30 grams of the Gersley boron. After each ingredient was measured, I dumped it into a container as you would in the kitchen like you were making a cake. If you add up the grams for the main ingredients, it comes out to 100. The addition of bentonite will help your ingredients to stay suspended in the water. Finally, you'll add mason stain colorants. The choice of mason stain is up to you, but I recommend testing them to make sure they're stable with your firing temperature and glaze choice. This is a black mason stain. All the recipes are a little different. For this one, I added a little bit of water to achieve a thin cream consistency. At this point, you'll notice the ingredients are a bit lumpy. I had a small kitchen hand sieve which was perfect size to run a 100-gram batch through. I poured all the water-based recipes into the sieve to get the materials as smooth as I could. I kept adding more water and sieving until all the ingredients appeared saturated and the mixture was smooth. Now here's the ink that I just made, and here are some watercolor squares made from another recipe. These are the only recipes that work both on greenware and on bisque. In this case, I'll demonstrate a project on a bone-dry greenware tumbler. I first used painter's tape to mask off the white clay. This will become a vine. I had a roll of peel and stick vinyl sheet made for a cutting machine, but I did my own cutting of simple leaf shapes. You can find these rolls at any craft store. I didn't really need to trace any specific shape onto the vinyl, as all leaves are organic anyway, so I just went for it. I peeled the paper backing from the vinyl and attached them to the clay right along the side of the vine. When I was happy with the design, I got to play with my homemade watercolor squares. To activate, I just added water along the top until it began to slake down and fill my brush. When the brush was full, I knew I had enough to start applying it. I worked from the stickers out to the clay to avoid them becoming dislodged. I added 3 layers of the watercolor until I couldn't see the clay underneath to achieve a solid coat. I let that dry completely. I then cut out bigger leaves and placed them over top of the first set of stickers along the same vine. Now let's play with the ceramic ink. The ink is already the consistency of a thinned down cream. I brushed this over the entire design. A good tip is to apply the inks and watercolors in thinner layers. To achieve solid coats of color, apply more layers. If you apply them too thickly at this stage, they may have trouble sticking to the surface, and the colorants may want to peel off the surface as they dry. When the ink was totally dry, I peeled away the resists. This is my favorite part. I got a nice clean design without any cracking in the colors. Now here's a vase I made earlier using the same technique, just expanding the design to fit around the piece. I love how the vines move your eye around the entire thing. I bisque fired it, then applied Amico C11 clear over the design. Both the black and the robin's egg colors survived the firing. The clear glaze intensified the colors and even changed the robin's egg from a sage green to blue. Don't forget, you can also use the ceramic ink for purposes of pushing through silkscreen designs like this, or even squeezing it through a superfine trailer for drawing. Now let's do something with the pastels and pencils. Keep in mind, these can only be used on bisqueware. They're created from the same recipe and rolled into coils. I then fired the pencils to cone 015. The pastels I just left at the bone dry stage. Since the pastels are soft, when I apply it to the clay surface, it'll leave the color and crumble away like a soft chalk. The pencils are harder like a graphite pencil and can be applied in thinner lines without as much crumbling. If I use another pastel color over the initial layer, it will blend nicely into it, and even better when you use your finger. If I tried this with the pencils, it'll still blend, but have a crisper edge to it, and it won't be as easy to spread with my finger. I used a rose mason stain to make the pink color, but it's very light and harder to see. Another thing you can do with the pastels to get a better blend with a light color is to scrape the surface and speckle the shavings onto the other colors. When using the pink pencil, I applied it and tried to blend it, but it was also a very light coloring. It did show up, but as the pencil's harder, I was not able to scrape it onto the surface like the other one. To fix these onto the surface of the bisque-fired tile, I sprayed hairspray over the top to ready them for glazing. Now here's a design that I made earlier using these. I colored the top of the tile with the pastels. I used the colored pencils under the center dividing line, and I also brushed the outline of each fruit with the black ink. I did hairspray this design to prevent it from smearing when being glazed. Then I coated it with Amico C11 Clear. The hairspray acted a little bit like a resist, so I see a few bare spots. With the colorants, I noticed that the pink mason stain became very faint, but the yellow and blue were still vibrant. I like that my attempts at blending these maintain their properties. Now let's try out the crayons. The crayons can only be applied to bisque-fired surfaces. The wax crayons were made from the same recipe as the pencils, except instead of adding water, I added several tablespoons of wax emulsion and mixed it together. When it was dry enough, I rolled them into coils and let them dry to the bone dry stage. The crayon is bulky, and I couldn't achieve fine lines, so I opted for bulky shapes like large polka dots, which I applied all over the surface. The wax in the crayon will provide a resist over the clay so that I can apply an underglaze over the top and it will bead up and slide right off. Here's another example where I really blacken the surface more with the crayon to see if it's possible for the crayon to leave a solid coat of color. You can see that I also added an underglaze wash over the center part. I applied Amico C11 Clear glaze over the design. When glazed and high-fired, the wax fired out, leaving the black stain showing through the underglaze almost like shading. The wax also acted to resist the glaze, which did give me some bald spots. Again, I applied Amico C11 Clear over this design. I did get a darker black surface where I applied the crayon. The glaze really did bead off the black section, leaving many little bald spots over the surface. To avoid the bald spots, I could have refired the bisque piece before glazing. If you have any questions about these, let me know in the comments section below. Thanks to the newest members of our Little Street Pottery Research Facility team. If you'd like to join the team and earn a title, click on the Super Thanks button or the link to buy me a coffee. It also really helps us out if you hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. See you next time in the studio.